Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome participants to the joint hybrid planning board meeting of October 23rd. First, a call to order on participants. Ms. Creighton.
Here.
Ms. Delicio.
I'm here.
Okay, Ms. Foley.
Here.
Mr. Olney.
Yes, here.
Ms. Filbert.
Here.
Ms. Tenney.
Here.
Looks like we have a full quorum tonight. I'd like to remind all board members, guests to be asked to be recognized by the chair if they wish to speak. And this meeting's being recorded. First item on the agenda, I have an acknowledgement of receipt of correspondence. I had two Iavoni letters, one on flooding, one on parking, and a Donna First letter, which I distributed to everyone this morning, if you hadn't gotten it
It was
previously.
embargoed.
Mine got into a quarantine.
Oh.
Yeah, mine did yet too.
So it went into some kind of quarantine, but I'm able to extract it today.
So, just a question, because there's dates on here, 10/5 and 10/7. And those are prior emails, and for Iavani, and
I
then there
have
was.
10/20 on Iavoni and 10/17 on First. Is that what is not?
Yeah, I'm just saying that the agenda the dates are wrong. So they're
Okay.
both 10/20, and I think there was 4 correspondent, 5.
Okay.
Just for
I can
clarity.
check. Gail, was there anything else? Are you on? I missed?
Yes, I'm here. And by the way, the dates are not incorrect because if an email or a letter comes in after Thursday of the previous meeting, it's not recorded until the next meeting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's just why there's 5 correspondents.
Okay, so I just sorted by whatever I saw from the last meeting forward, so I missed it. Okay, I'll make sure I check that next time. At this point, we have a public hearing at 7. I'd like public comments on any items not on the agenda with a limited period of time. Anybody from the public wish to speak? Okay, the first item next item, driveway entrances regulations. I'm gonna turn this over to Vice Chair Sarah Creighton. I believe we got an email that 3 have been done and 1's pending by the DPW.
Yeah, but before I get to that, I think this came about, thank you, Ron.
Thanks.
This came about because we were talking about the input we had from KP Law on the larger set of rules and regulations, which I'll come to if we have time. We can maybe talk about that later. So I said, well, let's just look at the curb cut, or otherwise more appropriately called regulations for driveway entrances, which is Article 7, which I put it in the packet. And then I did a couple things. One is I confirmed that on June 12th, we passed the entire package, including the regulations for driveway entrances. So these have been approved, these regulations were approved on June 12th. The minutes, at least that's what the minutes reflect. The other thing I did is I went through the went through the general bylaws change that we approved at town meeting to make sure that the driveway entrances actually reflected the important things. And it's my assessment that they do that and far more. They're quite specific about the plan requirements and so forth. The only thing that was different from what we might have talked about is that the regulations do say that they would consider having 2 entrances if there is frontage of greater than 200 feet. So that is the only departure that I could find, and I only skimmed it, but so I just wanted to before us. And then I think that the regulations that we approved in June are actually quite specific and prescriptive. I also checked with Nate and Chuck Dam, and they've approved a few. Let's see. They've approved curb cuts for 90 School Street, not 9 Crooked Lane, 26 Pine, and 1 pending for 2 Harold Street. And I asked about Ocean Street, I should know what number, Adele Urban's old house, and he said, looking at it, it seems like that would fall under the planning board purview. And I also brought that one to the attention of the building inspector, who didn't have an opinion about it. So, now that I have this from Nate, I'll forward it to Paul and just say, at the appropriate time, could you refer that one to the planning board? So that, I think my assessment is that the regulations do what we wanted, which is they reflect the prescriptive criteria that we came up with that one exception, which it seems to me to be reasonable. They also add they have a lengthy application process, specifics about the requirements for the permit, and I would say my recommendation on looking at this is that we stay the course and perhaps take it up in a year and find out with Chuck and Nate what information is maybe overkill or what information is missing.
Okay, so you're saying we pass this on June 12th?
We passed it on June 12th, so I would say we take no action on that portion. Oh, the last piece, which was what brought this whole thing up, which was did Jonathan Murray have any comments on that? And he did not review this section. So it seems to me to be fairly straightforward, and Chuck and Nate said it was working. So that's what I did, and what I can add.
Chris?
So I read them also a little bit more carefully, and I agree that they're great. There are some typos and some formatting things, which probably could be straightened out, and I might take a shot at that if nobody objects. But yeah, I do recollect the meeting where we approved them all, and I'm glad to hear that they're working.
So the meeting was, I actually checked the minutes,
Yeah,
so we have to remember.
Okay. Mary?
So, I think we approve them to then get reviewed by town council. And town council still hasn't reviewed the curb cut section, so I don't think we can post them on the website yet until they're approved by town council. I have a lot of issues with it. If I could go through some, to Chris's point, there's a lot of typos. I guess kind of starting at the beginning where it says, Article 10, Section 46 of the Manchester by the Sea general laws, they're actually the general bylaws. That's a clear distinction between state versus local laws. Starting out at the new residential, in that paragraph, it requires the application plan scale to be at 1 inch per 100 feet. And then if you go to page 8, it says 1 inch for 40 feet. So we need to be consistent.
Is that referring to the same plan?
Yeah, for the same application. I thought we had agreed that these would need to be stamped by a professional, and I don't see that on there. There's discrepancies between what the general bylaw states and what this states. This states that if the entrance is within 40 feet of another driveway, but in the bylaw it says it has to be 10 feet.
The bylaw says,
I think what the 40 feet is if there's a driveway within 40 feet, you're supposed to show it on the plan.
Yeah, so the entrance, so the
are you talking about the general bylaw? Because I don't see that in the.
Yeah, the general bylaw says for the 10 feet, so it says all driveway entrances shall be located at least 20 feet from the nearest street intersection, 10 feet from the nearest driveway entrance or fire hydrant, and 5 feet from side lot lines. So this, in the application, it says shall include if the entrance is within 40 feet of another driveway, but in the actual bylaw, we say it can
But
only
it's,
be.
it's saying that within a 40 feet, you show it on the plan, doesn't mean you can't do it. That's all that is, it's just about.
Right, the application shall include if the driveway is within 40
It's not
feet.
prohibiting it, it's just saying.
But it's
Okay,
it's a application that allows the DPW to determine if there's a safety issue.
okay, okay. The, let's see. So I thought with the 2 driveway entrances, we had decided as a board that if somebody wanted 2 driveway entrances, it was gonna come to the planning board.
I think that's the case.
That's not what this says, as I pointed out.
Right, so I think that needs to be changed back. The,
Can I just follow, just to clarify that, the approved version says residential lots shall typically be limited to a single apron and curb cut, however, 2 curb cuts may be allowed if the lot frontage exceeds 200 feet, or if the lot has frontage or on more than one roadway and both curb cuts meet all other criteria. So as I pointed out, that is the material difference between what we originally had, which seemed, at least in my read, to be a reasonable provision.
Yeah, it seems reasonable, but,
But it is, Mary's correct, it is different than what we had approved.
I think,
So I said, I was just gonna say, it's different than what we had approved. It's different than what's in the general bylaw, but the general bylaw does give us the authority to make regulations, and we have approved these regulations. So we have approved this. We approved this document on June 12th. And
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think there just wasn't a thorough review of it because and I didn't approve it, but I think that would have been discussed. I think, you know, a question to town council that I would like, amongst other things with this, is that the general bylaw says shall, and these requirements say whenever possible or may. So there's a discrepancy between, obviously shall means must, and whenever possible means discretionary. So I would assume the bylaw is the heavy hitter in this. So I think we should be consistent in the regulations.
well, I think our intent was to put it in the hands of a registered engineer, the DPW director, so they would have some leeway as to, you know.
Well, they have to follow the bylaw, so what we're giving to them, which we haven't passed over to them yet, but what we're giving to them is it's just different language than what's in the bylaw, so I think we should be consistent. This has a minimum length for a driveway, which we don't have in the bylaw. I don't know if that is something we want to add, we never discussed that. I would add, this is on page 5, that it's saying this applies when there's new driveways. I would add that, or if the driveway was expanded, right? Like, if a driveway width or something changes, it would also have to go to the DPW.
Can you get
I
away
think
with
the extent of our entrance is the driveway entrance. So the bylaw says the purpose is to promote pedestrian safety, limit potential traffic conflicts, and control the flow of water onto public ways and neighboring properties. So I don't know if we can control the entire driveway.
Well, I just think if you're expanding the width, obviously you could have an existing curb cut, and if you're expanding it, you would have to
You're
go.
saying the curb cut, you're talking about not the width beyond the curb cut, you're talking about the actual entrance
Yeah.
at the street, at the public way.
So it might not be a new, but it might be an expansion of
I
it.
see.
And then in the body of this, it says, the DPW and the town planner are reviewing the applications to see if they stay within the DPW or go to the, planning board. but then in the documents required, it doesn't have any set of plans going to the town planner. So I think that just needs to be added.
So this is added to the application request, not to the bylaw.
Correct, correct.
So that's something that can be done without any town vote or anything.
Correct, yeah,
Correct?
yeah,
So
I
we
just,
can
these,
just do those things, maybe if you could maybe write them down and we can try to get some of that stuff incorporated. I think we'd have a stronger application. Any comments?
So, one comment, just to correct Mary's, I think that it does, the material requirements that are in the bylaw do say shall in this. It says shall be 20 feet, whatever it is, 20 feet and 5 feet. Page 5, I believe.
so just the ones I was referring to, and there might be others, but this is on page 4 where it says,
Right, the applicant, the driveways and aprons shall provide adequate pedestrian use and ADA standards. Location wherever possible, a curb cut and driveway shall be located within 5 feet of any side or rear lot line.
okay.
And 10 feet of another curb cut and 12 feet of the, that's what the bylaw has. So, and I think, and you are correct that it is also we are silent on the length, we were previously silent and never discussed the length of a driveway. I think because we were focused on the entrance. But the 500 feet is consistent with the length of a subdivision road, which is probably why
And that's in our current zoning bylaws, or
current subdivision rules.
Do you have other?
Yeah, there's others. I mean, I think people's eyes are glazing over, but I guess my point is that,
Well, why don't you give us a list of bullet items and we can maybe discuss them at a subsequent meeting and say yay or nay?
yeah, and that's fine, and I mean, I have concerns with the process. I mean, we still have not met with the DPW to pass this over. I mean, I think we need a clean document to do that, and what the bylaw, the general bylaw does say is
To
that,
have them come in or be online when we do this discussion?
I think we have to pass it over, because it says in the bylaw that said application shall be subject to regulations developed by the planning board and may be modified from time to time. So if they're relying on us for subject to these regulations, I think our regulations have to be pretty strong.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have a question for Greg, if he's on.
He was supposed to show
Oh,
up.
I think I saw him. Maybe he may be not paying attention right now.
He's on.
Greg, can you hear me? Can you hear us?
Yes,
We held like 5 public hearings on these. If these are de minimis changes or if they are substantive changes to these or any other regs, do we need to open another public hearing? Or can we
Well, I think-
modify our vote from June 12th?
so you should assemble all your edits and a judgment call can be made whether or not it's de
Substantive.
minimis or substantive.
So why don't we do this, if you can give us, Mary, the list of bullet items and anyone else who has any, we can send them all to,
I put them in, yeah, I mean, I
Laura.
think typos.
Did we specifically review the application forms last time, or was it really more the body of the rig?
The application form was in the,
Okay.
but it seems to me that adding the planner is a reasonable.
I wasn't commenting on that. There are a few weird
Word-
inconsistencies on how many site visits and when and things like that, that I think if we were leaving the regs alone and just cleaning up the form,
Yeah, it seems entirely
that
reasonable.
we might take that tactic rather than we've already,
Yes,
yeah, just clean up the form so that it's not inconsistent and is clearer.
right. I guess I would, before we spend too much time on it, maybe get a sense of the board of whether or not the 2 substantive changes are, at least that I, as I see it, the specification that anything over 500 is limited, the driveway length is 500 feet. Now, that means that the DPW can approve, and then otherwise it comes to us. And the other substantive change is the one about the 2 entrances for those two cases I mentioned, 200 feet of frontage or a lot that would be a corner lot. So if we don't, if those, to me, those are the substantive things, and the rest are, there are procedures, inconsistencies perhaps, and typos.
Any comments on the two?
The 200, it says that if you allow two curb cuts, which we're discouraging,
Mhm.
that even with 200 feet of frontage, you only need to require that they be separated by 20 feet, which is nothing. Really, it's sort of two redundant roads right next to each other. So, you know, we might take that up at a future point. I think I'd like to get this to the DPW and have them do the work. And I would be curious after, so this is more of a procedural question, but, you know, Chuck and Nate and folks are doing it. I'd love to hear after some time, how's it going with respect to maintaining accessible cross slopes in the right of way? That's one thing that I'm quite concerned about in terms of public rights of way, and the ADA laws. The US ADA laws have recently been strengthened around that, so I want to make sure that we comply. And then, you know, a couple of other questions like, when are they doing site visits and how many? Because there's some inconsistency in the form about that. And what do they think is the right time to do the site visit?
The other thing is maybe I mean, I can send the entire board the note from Nate or Chuck, I think it was Nate, with the addresses that have been reviewed, and we can we can just do an informal look at whether or not we think there's a problem, you know. Not that we want to second guess them and they are the engineers, but
I don't feel any need to check their work or anything. I put my faith in them as engineers, but
I can ask them.
I would just be curious to hear how are they, you know, are they running into, particularly with when do they do the site visit, at design or at final inspection, because it differs between the document and the form.
Mhm.
And if they need to catch something about, did the cross slopes in the right of way, I know this sounds like technically in the weeds, but it's really important for keeping our sidewalks and right of way accessible to people. Want to ask them how that's going in their review, and do they have a chance to pick that up?
So why don't we do this? Why don't we get go ahead.
I have two more questions. One is we have to, at least as a board, if there are any in the pipeline for DPW, whatever, without a town planner who's taking over that role within this process, but also when we started the rules and regulations, it was a requirement that town council review them before they get official. And I'm just curious why we're not having town council review the curb cut or the driveway entrance.
Yeah, I don't know if that got through the cracks or how that happened, but
So I think if we submit comments and the document gets changed, I don't know who owns this document, but who changes the document, and then it goes to town council for review, I think if we're gonna stay consistent with procedures, that's the procedure.
okay, so let's a couple of steps here. Go ahead.
I just need to correct them. June 12th, Ms. Creighton moved to adopt the rules and regulations as amended, and the track changes. Mrs. Tenney seconded, and the motion passed. So we did not pass it subject to town council review. We may have said we would like it, but this motion does not. What we did move to approve site plan application and refer to town council for review and approval. So we did two things that night. One is the total rules, and the other was the site plan, which Mary's correct. In that case, we asked it go to town council. So that might explain why it didn't go to town council. So
So we asked town council to approve this
the site,
site plan
yeah, to review and give us comments back.
review, the requirement of a site plan
No, to the site plan application.
or the application.
Because the site plan application, it was in the rules and regulations draft. It was one of the articles in the rules and regulations. And we felt that with cell signaling coming, that was important.
So this is what I think we should do. Let's get everyone's comments, Mary's comments. Let's get them together. Let's get them to Gail. Gail, you can, and then I could we could take a look at them, I can go over it with Greg, who is our pro tem planner, and see, you know, if any of these are critical enough that we have to go through a public hearing
Right.
process. And if not, we'll try to, bring it before you, everyone here, to kind of, you know, yay or nay the, items,
And certainly all typos should get
and the
fixed.
typos, obviously.
Yeah.
Just one more question with the, do we have to include in the rules and regulation, or the regulations for driveway entrances, procedure, how somebody appeals a curb cut?
I think that was.
Well, I
it's in
think we
there.
had an appeal, it goes to the ZBA, I think, and, we had that happen, actually.
I thought it was the planning.
No, it
That
goes
was
to the
our
planning
old
board for a
bylaws.
special permit is what happens. It's in the regs. If the
Oh, they appeal
DPW
on
doesn't
decision.
approve it, or if the conditions are not acceptable to the owner, then they can file for a special permit with the planning board.
And then if somebody appeals the planning board, then it goes to the ZBA.
That's
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Okay. We have 4 minutes. I think I want to take something out of order. Greg's online. We had some items come in for special town meeting that the town is looking for our opinion on. These include, they need our review, they are a possible lease of the community center building, possible purchase of the community center by a citizen's petition, and a possible 97 encumbrance of Powder House Hill. And also, there's a citizen petition article for seeking to have all zoning amendments be subject to a ballot vote. So the town would like us to weigh in on this. So, my suggestion to Greg was if he could get us into a packet, some background details for us to take a look at. And then we need to meet, 7 days before, or at least 7 days in advance of special town meeting, to discuss and give our comments on these items. So, with that in mind, I asked, Greg, does the select board have to weigh in on these also?
Well, they'll express an opinion, recommendation probably from the floor of town meeting, if not beforehand. They may do that
So
on
for,
Thursday when they review the warrant.
my thought was us to meet with the select board next Monday, and jointly hear what all this is about, or is that not a good idea?
It certainly is possible. I can see if it'll fit in their schedules.
I'd like to ask the board if that's a good idea, or any other dates that may be a potential meeting date.
Did Greg just say that the select board's gonna review, will they review the substance of these citizens petition on Thursday?
They may say that for another evening or another day, but they will be finalizing the warrant on Thursday. Whether or not they'll express their opinions on them at that time.
Well, I guess we don't have time to post between now and Thursday night for a meeting of ours, anyway.
But they're meeting on Monday, right? They're meeting a week from today?
They're not scheduled to meet on the 30th, but if you want to, we can certainly pose that as a possibility,
Well, how
yes.
about us meeting on the 30th, which is a week from today?
When is their next meeting within 7 days? Just trying to look at my calendar.
The next regular meeting is the 6th.
So that'd
Be exactly a week before.
that's exactly a week before. I'm just thinking, is there an advantage in not us meeting jointly to hear the pros and the cons?
It'd be good to hear it all in
One,
the same information, but
So,
Could we have a joint portion of that meeting on the 6th, or is that unreasonable?
That's kind of close. We have to give our opinion and so,
Are we being asked for our opinion on the substance of each one?
I believe so,
Okay.
correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but it's.
So we have a bylaw that requires the planning board to opine as to their recommendation regarding any land transaction.
So we have to
And
write a
so-
report. You have to do that one page
There
report, right?
be a lease or a purchase or an encumbrance of land, then the bylaw says that the planning board will give an opinion regarding those proposals. So it's your independent recommendation,
Just do it next month.
but we can try to set up a joint meeting if you would like to.
Well, in the meantime, could you get us information on what the details are on these 4 items? And then maybe I can poll us through an email system what we want to do for a date. If we don't want to decide
Maybe
right
faster just to do it have our own meeting on the 30th.
maybe we have our own meeting. Laura?
Could I just ask you to repeat, there was some feedback and I didn't hear all the things that you said about what the topics are?
Here they are: possible lease of the community center building, possible purchase of the community center, possible Article 97 encumbrance of Powder House Hill. I don't know exactly what that means, but we should get it. And then there's a citizen petition article seeking to have all zoning amendments be subject to a ballot vote. So that would be after town meeting. You need some more information. We
I
would
think
vote.
that they're all citizens petitions.
They're all citizen petitions?
Yeah.
The petition, the article to lease is not a citizen
article to
petition,
lease.
but the other ones are.
That's right there.
Does the lease require us to weigh in or just purchase of land?
Well, so a lease does qualify as an interest in real estate, so that
Okay.
technically requires your viewpoint as well.
So we do an opinion on a lease and a land purchase.
Lease and land purchase.
Okay.
And the Article 97.
And then there's Article 97, and then on all zoning amendments to be subject to a ballot vote. So I'm a little unclear. I thought if you approve zoning at town meeting, it can't change for 2 years. You can't bring it up again for 2 years. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Is it if they fail or just if they pass?
This would only if they pass at town meeting, this would require a second bite at the apple, if you will, by requiring a ballot vote on the same proposed amendment.
Only if they pass, okay.
Okay, can you just give us some background data? I can get that to the board and on these items.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Because I saw the article, are parking spaces considered land use?
I think the land that they're on is land use.
Because I think there's one that is proposing parking on Beach Street, and I'm just wondering if that needs a planning board opinion.
That's a select board issue, I believe. It's a
That's like-
parking.
So that's not an interest in real estate. That's just a parking, it's a traffic regulation. It's not a real estate transaction.
Thanks.
Obviously, you're welcome to opine on it, but there's not a requirement to.
Some part of what would be necessary, but anyway, if you wanna do that. So, tentatively scheduling something for next month, or we wanna wait?
Chair,
Or-
we're gonna
I don't,
help each other out here.
Thank you, Sue. I don't wanna be the tail that wags the dog on setting a meeting, but I have some constraints because I'm traveling for work, so, could you, and I won't be checking email for a few days, so if you could ask us at the end of the
In the
meeting
meeting,
or.
maybe we can just,
Yeah.
All right, let's bring it up at the end of the meeting, it's
Okay.
after 7, so, okay, thank you all. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing on consideration for amendment to note 13 in section 4.2, table of allowed uses. The public hearing notice has been duly noticed and advertised in the Cricket as follows. In accordance with Mass General Laws 48, section 11, the Manchester by the Sea Planning Board will hold a public hearing on October 23rd, 7 p.m. It's a hybrid meeting with public participation via Zoom to consider the application of planning board to review an amendment to note 13 in section 4.2, table of allowed uses. This proposed change was requested by the ZBA. At this time, I'd like to take a roll call vote to open the public hearing. Mr. Only,
Yes.
Ms. Foley?
Here.
Ms.
Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Gilbert, Ms.
Yes.
And Ms. Delicio.
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to acknowledge Laura Tenney for opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, and Sarah, I'm sorry.
Sarah,
Some more
first.
slides just to, I think I'm gonna start.
Okay.
Can I share?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to enable me.
Where are you?
Sorry. This new Zoom. Okay, so. Here we go. So I just thought I would start by, explaining where in the bylaw we're talking about. Recently, we streamlined the allowed uses, the presentation of allowed uses, the explanation of allowed uses in each district into a table, which is in section 4.2. And so the item we're talking about tonight is the the description of the allowed use by special permit from the ZBA and a note that's in that table. So we're talking about modifying the description in the table and the note. So it's two related things. One adds description, and the provision that we're talking about has actually been around since, I believe, 1984, 1983 timeframe. So the current language, as it stands today in the table of use, says number 7 is part of an existing garage, stable, or other existing structure, family living quarters for an employee of the owner occupant. And by saying that, it designates it as a allowed use with a special permit of the ZBA. So we're not proposing to change that the ZBA would review these allowed uses, but we are proposing some language changes which Laura will explain. The note in the table further basically says the same thing that I just said. It's part of an existing garage, stable, or other existing structure approved by special permit of the ZBA, family living quarters for and to be occupied only by an employee of the owner, occupant of the dwelling. Well, such garage, stable, or other existing structure is an accessory use. Said employee must be employed on the premises. So that's what that's just to explain. We're all familiar with this, but people watching might not be familiar. So I'll turn it over to Laura, and you can I have also put
Okay.
the language, so.
Thank you. So the zoning board of appeals has for some time been asking the planning board to fix this existing long-standing regulation to an accessory use that is allowed by special permit with ZBA review. In use since the 1980s, this regulation pertains to use of an existing accessory structure or structures as residences for live-in employees of the owner. The requested fix by ZBA was to change the word employees to family members, or to add family member to the clause so that the regulation would match what applicants were actually seeking. The ZBA found that applicants for the special permit were designating individuals as employees, essentially creating contracts with family members at times to designate them as employees in order to comply with the narrow rule. Needs have changed in Manchester in the 50-plus years. There are no longer so many estates where live-in employees are housed in stables or garages. However, there is both a desire and an existing pathway for creating these accessory dwelling units. So we put the ZBA's question to town council, proposing some word of simply changing the word employee to family or adding family to employee and family. We were advised by town council that doing so would unintentionally create discriminatory language in conflict with mass housing law and other laws by restricting the type of individuals who can reside in a family living quarters. In fact, existing language restricting to employees only in family living quarters may also be discriminatory. So we're trying to fix that, update it, clarify it for contemporary use. So in an effort to update and simplify the existing regulation and to make it fair and equitable for all town residents and the potential occupants of the units, we propose a two-part change as follows, and the change has been reviewed by town council and by town administrator. And when I read the proposed language, it incorporates their comments. So number one, we would delete all instances of employee or family as terms in the regulation. Number two, we would add a clause to prohibit short-term rentals referencing the Mass General laws. That is not currently in the regulation at all, and we would add that. The section in question, as Sarah noted, are short, so I will read it in full, noting the proposed changes. Do you have that on a slide, or? Okay, great. Note 3.
I also have the track changes if that's better.
No, I can read it. The lawyer did also just fix some of the grammatical errors in the original language for clarity. So I can just read it this way, but as part of an existing garage, stable, or other existing structure, living quarters. Grammatically, that doesn't read so well, so living quarters is part of an existing accessory garage. That word has been added by the council, stable or other existing structure. And then note 13, which is what number 7 refers to, which changes it to, it just moves living quarters up to the front. So living quarters is part of an existing garage, stable, or other existing structure, approved by special permit of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And then adds the clause that short-term rentals, and then the clause that's been added by council, which is not in this draft yet, is short-term rentals as defined by general laws, chapter 64G, section 1, are prohibited within this accessory use. And lastly, we note that a special permit would still be required by the ZBA, so there is no change to that review process, as with the current regulation.
And I don't think I have the. So this is the intent, there may be slightly better language from the
Yeah, it's
attorney. So I can,
just reorganized, so to put the
right,
noun at the front of the sentence, so it makes a little more
Much
sense.
better,
yeah.
It's
So,
hard
sorry,
to
I
interpret
didn't,
from the original language, so that's the change, and then add accessory. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Sarah Melish, any comments on this from the ZBA?
Yes, Sarah Melish, Chair of the ZBA. The ZBA requested this change as we had several situations in which a parent died and the surviving parent did not want to remain in their house alone, and they wanted to sell it and invest in their child's home. They want their independence and their own kitchen, to be close, but not too close. So an accessory structure is ideal. It makes no sense to us that one can create space for an employee but not a relative. In addition, in the general district, a property owner can create an apartment but can only convert an accessory dwelling for an employee. This section of the bylaw requires the property owner to live on the property so that they have a vested interest in limiting the usage. So we don't feel that there'd be a lot of rental situations. And the other suggestion we had, and I don't know if you can do it, is that you might include that rents must exceed 31 days to avoid the high turnover in the summer with weekly rentals. Because our short-term rentals are less than a week. And apparently there've been some people who were called out because they're doing short-term rentals, and they said, oh, I'll just change it to a week. and then they don't have to file for a short-term rental. So I don't know if you're allowed to do it, but it might make sense to require the rental to be at least 31 days. To decrease the turnover.
Okay, thank you.
What is the duration of the short-term rental in the general law?
Less than a week.
In the state law that,
Oh, last comment from the attorney, let me see if I got it here.
The Mass General Law that reference is just a definition, it doesn't do days or dates.
so we use our general bylaw.
So I would actually say we don't reference Mass General Bylaw, we reference our own bylaw.
I don't have it here, but I think Mary's correct about the definition of short-term rental. In my quick search of what is the definition of short-term rental, not for the Mass General laws, 30 to 90 days is typically what that means. So we could define it somewhere, either in our definitions or in the reg itself.
Okay. So at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing up to comments, questions by the audience. And let me remind the audience, respect for all participants, whether you disagree or not. No negative personal innuendos or attacks will be tolerated. Please keep your remarks focused on the specific topic being discussed. And please refrain from repetitive questions made by someone else previously. At this time, anybody from the public? Brian, could you identify yourself? Could you unmute yourself?
All right. I'm Brian Miller, 92 School Street in Manchester. I want the definition of short-term rentals specifically defined. To me, anything less than 30 days, 90 days is a short-term rental. Number two, I still want the equation put in there, or the quote put in there, owner-occupied. Because if it's not owner-occupied, then the neighbors and neighborhood are the people that suffer from this, and not the owner themselves. So those are two requirements I would like to see added to this bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, Sandy, identify yourself.
Yep, excuse me, Sandy Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. This looks like an ADU type of situation, and in speaking about ADUs, is there a need for the existing structure to be existing for a period of time, such as 5 years or something like that? I think that was part of other ADU suggestions that the town has come up with. I don't know the exact years. So I think that's really important. I want to also support what Brian said about needing to make sure that it is the other unit is 100% owner occupied. I'm a little bit confused in that and also in the past, if the unit was rented to an employee or the employee was able to just stay there. Now we're creating a whole new rental unit, it sounds like. Does it need to be 6 months occupied or more? And then is it considered part of the housing stock? So I think we need to address all of these kinds of issues. Other than that, with other ADUs, we've had to deal with parking and other kinds of scenarios, and I don't know if that needs to be also included in this. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
I'm writing these down, maybe we can take them out. I'm writing these down, so maybe we can come back to them.
Okay.
And I don't know if you can answer any of those now, or it's something that you need to go back to the table. And I think that, given that all of those considerations need to be addressed, it may be too early to try to put this to town meeting until you get all of that hashed out.
Okay, understood. Don't know the length of occupancy.
We can come up back to those.
Okay.
When do we get other input?
Okay, any other input from the public? iPhone, could you identify yourself?
Hi there, it's Adam Zager, 21 Union Street.
Yes, Adam.
Hi, thank you for recognizing me. I think I want to echo some of the sentiments that were made on behalf of the board. The regulation is antiquated. It's tough. I'm speaking as owner of a property that has a permit for one of these barns, and essentially, you know, we can't even really get financing for it. It's like $400.50, $400 a square foot to build. So it's really tough, and I think this is a good change in the right direction. I totally agree about short-term occupancy, that has to be addressed, and parking and all that. And I think people need to remember it's part of the special permit process also. So all those issues do get reviewed by the board. It's not like ADUs where we're talking about something that happened as of right. All those issues would be covered in your permit process. So I think this is a really good first start, and appreciate the board's work on it, because it'll make a lot of sense for property use in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Let's see, I don't see any other comments. Greg Federspiel, have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Ron. So I just want to clarify the short-term rental definition that town council suggested adding. So that, it doesn't have a minimum amount of nights rented, but it does say you cannot rent it basically on a reserve in advance basis. So in other words, you can't put it on Airbnb or vacation RVO type thing. So the prohibition in the state definition is that it cannot be reserved in advance through the typical online reservation systems or any other reservation system.
Okay.
I think Brian put his hand up.
Brian, did you want to speak again, or is that just a residual hand?
No, I would like to speak again. This is Brian Miller, 92 School Street. Two other things. I would like to definitely see a specific length of time put on it for what short-term rentals means. And number two, who is going to enforce this? Every time I've listened and been in contact with the boards have always said that the housing inspector is the person that enforces this. I don't think this falls under the realm of the housing inspector if we're creating this new additional unit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other comments from the public?
Shall I share? Would you like me to share the summary to make sure people hear that?
Yeah, so Sarah will share a summary on screen of the comments we received. I don't know if it said 5 years, okay.
That was a suggestion from one of the
Okay.
people.
Parking, did you put on? Okay. All right, I think you got them. I had. Any, Laura?
Ron, I did find the clause that town council submitted about short-term rental, that definition, so I can read that if it's
Okay.
So this is Mass General Law, Chapter 64G, defines short-term rental as short-term rental, an owner-occupied, tenant-occupied, or non-owner-occupied property, including but not limited to an apartment, house, cottage, condominium, or a furnished accommodation that is not a hotel, motel, lodging house, or bed and breakfast establishment, where at least one room or unit is rented to an occupant or suboccupant. And 2, all accommodations are reserved in advance, provided, however, that a private owner occupied property shall be considered a single unit if leased or rented as such. So that provision prevents any kind of advanced reservation, kind of doesn't need the term because it's prohibiting the entire operation.
It doesn't give a specific amount of days.
It is not tied to a term because it just prohibits
Okay.
reservations in advance.
All right, thank you. Mary? Oh, Sarah, sorry.
It concerns me if we refer to the state definition, because that does not require owner occupancy. And I think it's crucial that we require owner occupancy.
So
We'll cut down on,
maybe we define short term and leave it as owner occupancy. Okay, Sandy, you spoke again?
Yeah, I have a question. It was a little bit odd because you got rid of family living quarters and it just says living quarters, which I don't know if there's a definition. I guess maybe the zoning might know what needs to be in this unit by way of, space or bathrooms or any of that kind of stuff. It just, the way it's worded is a little bit odd, and maybe it's referring to another set of text that's not being presented here. So that's just a general question. I'm a little bit confused as to what is defining this space other than it's in a separate dwelling. So it's just a little confusing, and it was just the wording is odd, so.
So if I may, I think I can answer all of the questions that were raised, or maybe collectively we can. The first is this considered part of the housing stock? And I think the answer is yes. If it was an occupied unit, it would be a unit in town. The second thing, how would parking be considered? I think, however, the ZBA currently deals with that issue in the special permit process would be how that.
it would be a change of use,
Yeah.
which would kick in the parking requirements
Right.
based on the number of units.
Right, so that is covered elsewhere in the bylaw.
Yes.
Who is the enforcement agent? I believe the building inspector is the enforcement agent. Greg, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and why delete, at least, I think the first part of Sandy's question was why delete family from living quarters? And we were advised that restricts.
That wasn't, just to let you know, that wasn't a question of why delete. It's that when you delete
Maybe I can finish.
family living quarters, it
Sandy,
just
Sandy,
says.
hold on, let Sarah finish first.
Okay,
So I heard the question, or people might be wondering why delete the word family, and that was on advice council that is potentially restrictive, and we don't define family living quarters in our definitions. And the living quarters, we were trying, I think the intent was to try to keep things as like the original. And I'm not sure living quarters has a specific definition, but it probably is in building code, I presume.
It does, it requires separate kitchen and separate bathroom.
Right, living quarters is a building code definition.
And I don't know if living quarters is the full definition you need, but there's a definite definition that in order to have an accessory dwelling unit, the living quarters, you have to have a separate kitchen and separate bathroom. That's what makes it different from an in-law suite. An in-law suite would not have a stove.
Okay,
Whereas this
so,
would have a stove.
yeah,
hopefully that.
just to clarify, I was not second guessing I heard the reasoning why you needed to get rid of family. It was the definition of what living quarters mean.
Sandy, point of order, could you raise your hand and be recognized if you wish to speak?
Okay.
All right, Sandy.
Okay, thanks, sorry. I just want to clarify, I wasn't second guessing the family. That was articulated very clearly and it made sense earlier. It was the understanding of when you got rid of the line, the word family, it just goes comma, living quarters, and then it doesn't describe living quarters, what that means, and if that refers to another section of what that living quarters is supposed to have, then you might need to reference that.
Okay.
Because it doesn't say what a living quarters means. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg,
I was,
So
did you?
one option may
Sandy,
be,
you would point-
instead of using the word living quarters, you could use the word dwelling unit, which I believe is defined in the bylaw. So you could just substitute living quarter for a dwelling unit.
I was just gonna say that the Mass Gov definition for accessory dwelling unit says it's additional living quarters, so I think it's a one big circle definition.
So we could change it to, okay, any other comments from the public? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to close the public portion of the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
A roll call. Oh, Chris,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
and Christina?
Yes.
Okay, at this point, I'll open up to the board for any comments or thoughts on our proposal after hearing from the public. For instance, changing living quarters to dwelling units or leaving it as living quarters. Any comments on that? Mary?
So, just on that or general?
Just on anything, just.
Yeah, I guess my overarching question is, we have an existing ADU bylaw, so I don't know why we would have two ADU bylaws. I think we should try to either incorporate into one, or at least have discussion on that. I think this started out as trying to, from the ZBA, trying to find a solution to when people really weren't an employee but wanted a family member to live on site, and now it's morphed into allowing an accessory dwelling unit attached or detached with really not a lot of requirements around it as we do in the other ADU bylaw. So we don't have size limit, we don't have owner occupied, we don't have has to be within an existing structure. There's just a lot that we don't have spelled out, parking requirements, things like that. So I think if we're gonna have two ADU bylaws, we should add some meat to this one. With the people's concerns, I think it does make sense. Well, again, I would prefer to have, one ADU bylaw, but there has to be strong definition around number of days for renting, because each 10 of these does require then an affordable unit to stay in compliance for affordable housing, so we should be cognizant of that. The owner occupied piece, and make sure the parking is spelled out.
Okay. Any other comments from the board on this? Any
So,
changes?
So I would point out in response to Mary that we have two existing ADU bylaws now. And the one where we were proposing with all the meat on it was by right, as long as the ZBA is reviewing this with a special permit, I don't think we have to do the ZBA's job for them in defining exactly what they need to approve. I do think there are some good things to put in there. I think a 6-month, for example, occupancy requirement would be good. In addition to the definition of the short-term rental. I don't think we need to do anything about parking because it's covered under the change in use. I think the years in use for an existing structure, I think is arbitrary. But maybe we could say 3 years, I don't know, maybe 1 year. Maybe it doesn't matter if you're gonna build a new house and you want an accessory unit for your family, whatever, go get the special permit to do it. And yeah, I agree that let's call it a dwelling unit instead of living quarters, just to be consistent.
Laura?
I disagree on adding parking. I think that it's already in the review of the ZBA through the special permit. I don't think we should belabor parking here. I think it's inconsequential whether we call it dwelling unit or living quarters. As Mary pointed out, the language kind of somewhat circular, refers back to us, back to itself. And I think the intent of this for clarity was to keep it as close to the existing one, fix the grammar and take out the discriminatory parts of it. So I would be, I would lean towards keeping living quarters. I think it's defined, and but I don't feel strongly enough to get stuck on that piece. I do take issue with defining how long an existing structure needs to exist. I think that's arbitrary. And I take issue with lengthy controls on what a short-term rental means, 6 months and over. I think we're just really limiting how we can provide housing in the town, and I think that there's a need to. So if we, from my point of view, saying short-term rental and referring to the Mass General Law here in this bylaw is enough. If we feel like we need to add somewhere else in our definitions and our regs what that limit is on a short-term rental in terms of term, let's do it in one place so that it applies consistently across, that we're not defining each regulation. We have 2 ADUs on the books right now. I agree with Chris that if we're doing a by right one, that is a different animal. This is a special permit. We've had it for 50 years or whatever it is, and let's clarify it. Let's make it grammatically correct, and let's put the guardrails on about short-term rental units, and then otherwise make it not discriminate. Thank you.
Okay, anything on owner? Go ahead.
I guess the other reason I think, I mean, Laura sort of touched on this in her remarks, but I think times have really changed, and also if 2 identical homes with identical carriage barns or whatever sit next to each other, and one is owned by someone who has an employee and the other is owned by someone who does not have an employee, then there's a lack of equity there as well that may be may in fact be illegal. But it certainly, we can agree, I think, one could agree that those are inequitable if all things being equal. So I think the change is needed, and it's a great opportunity. I also agree that the ZBA will oversee the parking and the requirements, and I think that they can also interpret existing. And it says existing, so that seems to me to be something that's on the ground, but I'll let the ZBA decide that. And I think that I was going to suggest that we add the Mass General laws and our relevant short-term paying guest. I believe it's part of the our general bylaws, that we reference that. And so if the town feels that short-term paying guest bylaw of 6 days is too low, then that should get changed there. Not having the planning board or the zoning opine about what should be in a short-term paying guest bylaw. So I would say we could reference the Mass General Law and the short-term paying guest as defined in the town bylaws.
General bylaw.
General bylaws as a sort of belt, or wherever that provision is. So those are my comments.
And this owner occupancy, you said kicks in automatically? This is automatically an owner occupied situation?
The old bylaw was. I don't know what you did with this one,
Yeah, I don't know about that, but,
it had to be owner occupied.
okay, so any other comments? So it sounds like we wanna, just from.
Christina, I have my hand up.
Christina, sorry.
All right, I'm just not feeling well. So my concern right now is that without the timeline, and I completely appreciate what we're trying to aim to do, without putting some timeframes around when these are built, you know, the setbacks for an accessory building are different than the setbacks for a dwelling unit or a home. So without recognizing that they're different in a lot of districts, I think we're not addressing that boundary that people are expecting. And the ADU is in place, the existing one, you can't change the entrance, and you have some, you know, language and ability to chime in where people's entrances would be, but this doesn't address that portion at all. And I think that's concerning, that this doesn't have to be an existing building, and it can be built as an accessory building, not as a dwelling unit, and then converted to a dwelling unit and not comply with the setbacks. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Christina. Okay, so, it sounds like, kind of a mixed bag of things. On the living quarters to dwelling units, I think, the idea was to just keep it as living quarters and not make the change, since it just circles back to that anyway. Kind of agree to that. On the short-term rental definition, we were thinking of moving that, of having that defined in the general bylaw.
It is both.
Reference it.
Yeah.
Reference the general bylaw.
Reference the general bylaw.
In the Mass General, both,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Ron, can I just ask a quick question? Aren't they at odds? I think the Manchester says less than 6 nights and Mass General Law is silent. So there's gonna be a conflict right off the bat.
But we're prohibiting both. Is I think what we're saying is short-term rentals as defined by Mass General Law, blah, 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 and the Manchester by the Sea General Bylaw section, whatever it is, are prohibited. So that would be inclusive of,
Okay, thanks.
that was what I was thinking.
And they can't be advertised and all that, right? That's the Mass General Law.
I don't know about, I'd have to look at it again for advertising. It said can't do advanced
Advanced
reservation.
reservation.
Parking, we figured is taken up by the ZBA. Short-term rental definition, that we just talked about, existing length of occupancy. If we want to define that. Doesn't sound like we need to.
Sarah, you have a sense from you probably don't know what happens to these after they are approved.
What we're seeing is nothing's being rented. It's going to, it's family members, and I think the only time they're rented is one's created long ago for employees that have been lost in the woodwork and now being rented. But I certainly think that in order to have this viable, you need to make sure you're not doing summer rentals. You need to say 6 months, because otherwise you're gonna have everyone doing summer rentals, and I think that's what people object to. If you do 6 months, so you're talking about somebody who's there. You know, if you have a family member, you're not gonna be renting it anyway.
Right. Should it say, oh, go ahead,
But it's not family member.
with the chair.
So we can't say, we don't wanna discriminate, so we can't say who gets to occupy. Could be a family member,
Right,
could be a
right.
non-family member. But also, I think we're prohibiting the short-term rental outright, then we don't need to define a term, it seems to me, because we've just prohibited it.
You're prohibiting 6 days under the town bylaw,
And any advanced reservation.
but you're allowing weekly rentals for summer.
Well, the other thing I was gonna say was that you might have a situation where one family member rents it back to the other, you know, if the parent's trying to help pay the mortgage of the child, so that's not really our hunt, right?
Mr. Chair. It seems to me that we have agreement that we don't want to have an Airbnb or a summer 3-week rental or 31 days. So why don't we just say short-term rentals or rentals of less than 6 months, whatever the number is, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and or short-term rentals as defined by the bylaw, by the MGL and Mass General bylaws are prohibited. You know, or something that's even, that, you know, it seems to be a fairly big sticking point for people that, so maybe we should be prescriptive, even though we.
May I ask a clarifying question? Because I think where we were starting was trying to find that somewhere else, so we're not defining it in different places, different ways. I mean, we
Right.
just went through this with the curb cut, you know, it's how many feet here, how many feet there, we're one consistency.
Right.
Does our other ADU that's already on the books speak to short-term rentals at
Not
all?
now.
No,
We talked about.
okay. So
It, it requires it to be the house to be owner occupied. There's no restrictions with respect to renting.
okay.
And it has to be within the existing structure,
Mhm.
which would tend to, if you owner occupied an existing structure, you would tend not to have Airbnb type things, but you might.
You might, yeah, I mean, people do that as income.
Christina, you have your hand up?
I do, thanks, Ron. I know, I just feel like this is kind of rushed again, and I feel like there's gonna be things that come up, but two things that come up in my mind right now are curb cuts. I would like to see, you know, no new curb cuts come out of this, and then I foresee, you know, down the road, one of these units being sold or sold as a condo. So I guess I'm concerned about that.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
I'm just, so getting back to what Sarah Melish was saying, I think solving some of these issues is putting back in the owner occupied piece, that the main dwelling is owner occupied, and thus you would have less chance of being, well, maybe not less chance, but the short-term rental or the cases where, obviously you don't want the case where, I don't think we want the case where both units then get rented out. So, you know, you could have the main dwelling and now an ADU, and if there's no owner occupied requirement, which we have in our existing ADU bylaw, they could both be rented out. And that changes the fabric of a neighborhood, so I would lobby to get the owner occupied piece back in.
Just out of curiosity, if I may, why does that change the character of the neighborhood?
To have 2 units on a,
To have 2 rental units as opposed to 2 owner occupied units, or 1 occupied unit and 1 rental unit?
it's turnover, it's not knowing your neighbors, it's, you know, I mean, everybody could have their own perception of that, so I don't need to answer that piece, but it definitely, if you if you have rentals, it can change the character. So I'm just saying, I don't think we're going down the path that we want now 2 rentals on 1 piece of land.
How can you tell if the house next door is rented or owned without asking them?
I don't really think that's what we're debating here.
I think it is. You talked about neighborhood character, Mary. So
Of
what
course
is
I
it about character that changes?
That you have 2 rentals, and I think that, so again, I will reiterate that adding the owner occupied piece back in gets us closer to the existing bylaw that we have, and closer to what the ZBA came to us and was asking to structure differently to keep the bylaw as closely as it is. The original ask was to make it family living quarters and not just employee, and that we can't do that. So I think if we're opening it up to any rental, having the owner occupied piece is important.
And that's in the existing one.
Correct.
Owner occupied is not in the,
Yes, it is.
it's in the except 9.2.
No,
No.
it was in this one.
No, I don't think so.
That an employee of the owner on the premises
Correct.
So I can,
required owner occupancy because we've denied them for lack of that.
So it's already there.
It
Correct.
should be, unless you inadvertently eliminate it. It's always been there.
It's in the footnote. It's in the footnote.
so it said, this is the existing language, I think. Family living quarters for, can't read this,
Of the owner occupant of the
owner
dwelling.
occupant of the dwelling, well, such garden,
It's because employee was modifying, owner occupant was modifying the employee.
right,
That's why we struck that clause out. You
So
can't
where's
be,
the track changes?
of the owner occupant, okay, I see. But the, okay,
So we'll leave that in there.
Well-
We're not crossing that out.
well, it had fallen out, so.
Mr. Chair.
Miss-
yes, we could say, we could call the, could change it to a tenant of the owner occupant, if that is a sticking point. I also want to say loud and clear that we don't discriminate, we're trying to take out discrimination, so we don't discriminate against renters. If someone is a different income strata and they rent in the town, they are as much a resident as this town as anybody else. And that might not have been in the intent, but I think saying that a town character changes because people rent or people turn over is not the town that we are trying to be. I think we want to be welcome to people regardless of their economic strata and their ability to buy or buy today, buy tomorrow. So I'm not saying at all that that was implied or intended, but I just want to be clear that you are a resident whether you rent or own, and that's really not what is at stake here. We're trying to be anti-discriminatory.
The other thing I'd like to say is in the current bylaw, it's restricted to accessory structures. That
Right.
other structure would be saying you could put it in your principal house, and that's not there today.
The,
This section is only accessory structures.
the town council did add in the word accessory. It's not in the
okay,
document
other
that you
accessory
showed, Sarah, but I
structure.
did add those corrections
Sorry.
from the town council just to reorganize the grammar
Yeah.
to add accessory in both clauses.
So can you just, I'm sorry, can we just take a second and make sure I get the
Could
what
you-
town council has said? Laura, can you just read it out?
Yes, I
Out
can
loud,
read,
please.
this is what town council gave us before,
Yeah.
so number 7 was living quarters
Yes,
as part of an existing accessory, new word, garage, stable, or other existing structure.
lost my mouse here.
And then I'll read you note 13.
Why is my mouse not working?
Ron, I just have a comment to make that if those comments were directed at me, yes, you're taking it completely out of context and not what I stated, so. I know I have to defend every single word I say at these meetings, so that was not what was, that was not even what came out of my mouth. So I don't know how that got from what I said to there, but so be it, but that is not what I said.
I'm sorry, an existing accessory?
So
Do you want me to read note 7?
Yeah, sorry, read it, I'm sorry, I couldn't find my mouse.
Okay, living quarters.
Yeah.
As part of an existing accessory garage, stable, or other existing structure. And then note 13,
Mm-hmm,
living quarters as part of an existing accessory garage, stable, or other existing structure and approved by special permit of the zoning board of appeals. Short-term rentals as defined by general laws, chapter 64G, section 1, are prohibited within the accessory use. I'm just giving what the town council gave, not any. Section, general laws, chapter 64G, comma, section 1, comma, are prohibited within this accessory use.
Okay, and I'm adding in and Manchester by the Sea, General Palace. So I'm gonna share this.
Ron, it's Christina. I have my hand
Christina,
up.
sorry.
Sorry. You know, I just feel like we need to put something in there with date of construction. Someone can't build something and then turn around and it not meet the setbacks and claim, oh, we didn't mention it. So I do feel like we need to say something to the effect of anything built, you know, prior to the last 5 years is grandfathered, but within the last 5, it has to be within the current zoning setbacks. I mean, otherwise people are just gonna, you know, build this and claim it was an accessory building and have no compliance with the setback.
Okay.
So we wanna take the issue, Mr. Chairman. We wanna take the issues, I think we have some disagreement about, I think we have agreement on, my sense is we have agreement on these changes, we have agreement on the, not implying that we have agreement on the change as a whole. Do we wanna take the issues that we heard and take them one by one and see if
Yes,
we wanna?
let's get this nailed down so we can send it on, or vote to send it on.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and bring up the other list. These are the issues.
Questions?
These, if I can share again, I'll just make sure we have the issues. So definition of short-term. We've just had some debate about whether we wanna put some specific, this is a compilation of all the input. So we wanna specify anything beyond the Mass General Law and our general bylaws, like this number of days,
I'm okay with that,
leave it as is.
unless there's an objection.
Okay, hearing nothing. How about owner occupied?
I think that's been defined.
No, we have not, we didn't put that did come out in the new version that
So
was.
I suggest we put it back in.
I agree with that.
Laura?
We had talked about putting it back in and saying tenant of owner occupied to kind of revert back to the intent of the original.
Fine with me.
Does that make sense to people?
Tenant of owner occupied.
Okay, I have to stop sharing.
Does tenant have any definition that wouldn't fall under that?
Well, I don't know.
Well, a family member would not be a tenant if they're not paying rent. Tenant pays rent.
Laura?
Do they? I mean, they maybe, but if we are not commenting on whether we care whether they rent or not, and we only want the main unit to be owner occupied, the person who doesn't own the accessory dwelling unit, isn't that person a tenant? Whether or not what the financial arrangement is? Because they don't own the unit.
You just say living quarter in an owner occupied property. And forget the tenant.
That could work. Okay, oh, sorry, I'm not sharing. One screen, it's challenging. Okay, so living, does that make people feel comfortable, living quarters in an owner occupied property?
Yeah.
I think that covers owner occupied.
That's fine.
No?
I'm just,
Yes? Yay, nay?
it would have to be repeated here.
Seems to me that like we should, sorry.
Go ahead, Sarah, Sue.
I feel like the owner occupied portion it belongs, but maybe we put it at the end. Cause living quarters in an owner occupied something, and then you're as part of an existing it doesn't.
Are we
I
defined,
agree it should be
agree?
at the end.
I think
of
it-
an owner-occupied
At the
property.
end might
Okay, might
be
be
clearer.
primary dwelling unit shall be owner occupied. How about that?
No, you don't
No,
have to be a primary dwelling unit. You just want an owner-occupied property.
Instead of the dwelling, of the owner occupied dwelling, or?
No,
Tell me.
living quarters, get rid of in an owner-occupied
Right.
property and put that after existing structure.
Right, but it's also in note 13.
I see.
Ron,
Right.
but is this asking for the ZBA to do a special permit for an accessory structure?
Attached to a house.
It doesn't say attached or
No,
detached.
not attached.
It has to,
Not attached?
is it specifically not attached?
An accessory.
Detached?
Mhm.
Okay. Is that inherent in an accessory structure? Because it isn't a garage an accessory structure?
Only if it's not attached. If it's part of the house, it's part of the primary structure.
To make it
Okay.
accessory, it
Okay.
needs to be in a separate building,
Separate.
correct?
Right.
Sorry.
No, yeah, but my original point was that this is asking to get a special permit for being able to rent out an accessory structure. If the accessory structure becomes the owner occupied structure, that is not being rented out.
Oh, the main structure is owner occupied, I think that.
No.
Well, Sarah was just saying
Property is
either.
owner occupied.
Right,
Yeah.
whichever unit the
Yes,
owner
right.
occupies is not for us to determine.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay,
So that's if you have a small
point.
apartment that
you wanna stay.
I own, but I want my children to live in the,
Big house, right.
and that would still qualify.
But when you go for the special permit, are you going for, I want to rent out my house? Or are you saying I want to create a new accessory dwelling unit and rent it out?
We're doing a change of use to allow living quarters in an accessory structure.
Okay,
We're
just
not
living
talking
quarters.
about renting, we're not talking about
Right.
anything.
You
We're
wanna-
not talking about how it's used. It's
Except,
just allowing a residential structure in an accessory, a living quarters in an accessory structure. That's all the ZBA does.
okay, I'm gonna go through the other issues.
And requiring
Is
the
that okay?
property to be owner occupied. And that would be a condition of the special
Special
permit.
permit.
Okay.
Okay, the next issue was, so we did owner occupied, existing structure for a duration, does anybody wanna? This is the existing. My feeling is let the ZBA figure out that.
Yeah, there's no requirement now.
That's the problem.
That's the
The
problem.
problem is your existing bylaw says existing structure and it doesn't say existing when.
Yeah.
And I think the original intent was existing whenever that bylaw was changed. But it wasn't written in there, so we had one that came before us that had been denied a couple of years earlier and we had to approve it because there was no definition of existing. So,
So one member of the public's, oh, sorry.
So just to sort of do both sides of the argument, I understand the setback concern expressed by Christina, but this is a special permit, which we trust the ZBA in reviewing these. So, I mean, if someone builds something new and they build a new accessory structure, what are the downsides of also allowing them to take an advantage of this, as well as people who have owned homes for 100 years, or, not owned a home for 100 years, but it was built 100 years ago. You understand my point, hopefully. So what are the pros and cons of allowing this for a brand new build?
I guess the one that I can see is the one that Christina mentions, which is this is a way around the setbacks. So, that whether we think the setbacks are right or not is immaterial, we have them. And so, I guess if I were on the ZBA and somebody had a new garage coming, then I'd say, well, it's clearly a resident, it's not like it, I don't know. So I think that's if we think the setbacks have value they're there for a reason, then someone who's had their garage for 5 minutes is potentially getting away around that. So,
So it's important to include some kind of guardrail.
you asked what is the reason, that's the one I can see,
Right.
whether it's
This is,
important or not.
this would require us some more time to go in this.
Like it.
Go ahead, Laura.
The existing laws have been on the books since 1983 or something. It's dealt with existing accessory structures. We're just keeping the same accessory structures. Things will change over time. There might be an occasion when somebody builds a garage and then their parents get ill and, 6 months later they want to turn it into a dwelling unit. Life happens, right? But I think we just need to allow the regulation to be clarified to exist in the same way it was existing before, but taking out the discriminatory language that regulates who can live in the structure and just allow it to function and allow the ZBA to do their work. I think it's been working. We're just sorting out the parts that are not legal, adding some constraints to do the short-term rental thing, to disallow that, and then the ZBA will, in their good judgment, review the special permit. I mean, someone will build a garage and perhaps they will have a grandchild or have a parent who gets ill and need to make a change, but I think that's okay.
Yeah, and I agree with Laura, and I think if the garage were 3 feet away from somebody else's bedroom, I suspect the ZBA would
We trust them.
create some conditions about making that happen, so, yeah.
All right, Sarah, what's next?
So the other things that came up is Mary said there are not enough requirements we talked about parking. I don't know if there are specific requirements. The one that Christina mentioned was to prohibit a new curb cut, but I'm thinking that our driveway application would then say that it has 2 for the property.
Yeah.
And the driveway regs handle that, I think, just looking. So,
Can I ask Sarah Melish a question?
Go ahead, Sarah Melish.
So if one of these comes in front of you and so they need the 1 or 2 additional off-street parking spaces, and in order to do that, they need to add impervious surface. As part of your special permit, you do all the calculations, right, that they're not over the impervious?
Yes,
All
so,
that.
so coverage of structures and impervious, we look at that for every single application, even if there's existing structures. We had one out on Summer Street, we made them pull up the driveway and put in pervious surface because they were over the limit, because they had illegally paved it.
Right.
So that's important to us, we look at it, and we also look to make sure it's not more injurious or detrimental to the neighborhood when they wanna do these. So if you're 2 feet from somebody next to you, that might be more injurious and detrimental to the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I've seen those pass, so I think that is a concern. I think it, I guess you see how things flesh out, but,
Christina
Thank
has
you.
her.
Christina?
Sorry, it took me a minute to get there. So I guess, yes, we do address it in the curb cut, but it just gets kicked back to the planning board. And my concern is in certain neighborhoods, taking up an on-street curb cut is gonna take away from on-street parking. And we're talking about, allowing more dwelling units, MBTA zoning units. Like, we need our on-street parking. And so every new curb cut you know, and within the densely populated area, it takes away from an on-street parking spot. So I'm suggesting that we put a guardrail on this and not even allow it. So if you're going to convert this, you just flat out do not get another curb cut. It doesn't go into the special permit. It's a hard no now.
Okay, want to add that comment?
To be clear, the ZBA does not do curb cuts.
No, I understand.
Chair.
Would it be better, since, back to the curb cut regulation, since the prohibition against 2 curb cuts kind of crept in there, would it be better to address Christina's comment in that regulation and disallow the 2 curb cuts
I agree with that,
and not do it here?
yeah.
Yes, I agree.
I think we should
Let me do it
take over
across the
that
board.
part,
Yeah.
Okay, do we have it written now with
I think
everyone's
we-
comments and that we can kind of move it forward
I think-
and put it up on the screen and move on to the next?
Yep, so I'm gonna take out the track changes stuff, so we have a final version. Okay? And I don't know the section of the general bylaws, so
You'll add those
we'll
in.
have to add that in.
Greg does?
So,
It's not on the
the
screen.
use table is living quarters as part of an
It's not on- It's not on the screen.
Oh, sorry. And I better save this, hold
Here we go.
on, okay, it's saved. Make sure it's saved. Okay, living quarters as part of an existing accessory garage, stable, or other existing structure in an owner occupied property. That's the allowed use, and it and the table indication says special permit, we're not changing that. Note 3 is living quarters as part of an existing accessory garage, stable, or other existing structure in an owner occupied property approved by special permit of the zoning board of appeals of the dwelling, well, that does,
No,
what
that
does
doesn't
it,
make sense.
Here.
fix
The
that?
town council helped
Yeah.
us rewrite
Yes,
that
what-
grammar.
Yes,
Do
please,
you want me to read that?
yes, please.
Okay. Let me reread that, and also owner occupied, we could hyphenate that,
Yeah.
would be clearer. 7, note
Yep.
7 also. Okay, so note 13. Living quarters,
Mhm.
comma, as part of an existing accessory garage, stable, or other existing structure, no comma.
No comma?
No comma there. Oh, no, actually, I guess there should be comma.
Yeah.
Well, then no, there shouldn't be a comma. On an owner occupied property.
You could say as part of an
You
owner
think that's
occupied
clearer?
property.
And you got 2 as part of.
Oh, yeah,
That's getting
okay.
confusing.
True.
On an owner occupied
Yeah, on is good.
property.
Too many drafters. Sorry.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, on an owner, so let's see, other existing structure, on an owner occupied property, and approved.
And approved?
Well, that's what he had before, but we put in owner, so let's see how this works, and approved by special permit of the zoning board of appeals, period. Delete the next, you're kind of repeating it, delete
Right.
that.
Right.
Okay, delete that sentence.
Thank you.
Now, short-term rentals as defined by Master General Bylaw.
No, that's right, MGL.
Okay, yep, 64G, Section 1, and
You wanna-
MBTS, yep.
Just to see.
Are
for the
prohibited,
chapter.
one more clause at the end, are prohibited within this accessory use for town council.
That's good.
Christina?
Thanks, Ron. I guess, you know, to reiterate, I feel like, you know, as usual, planning board, we're kind of bringing this in under the wire. So, like, the problem that we're trying to solve here is that family members want to live on the same premise as their family. That's what I take from this. So I don't actually see the bylaw, and Chris has brought this up before, any kind of regulation that prohibits someone from putting a second stove in their residence. So I guess, is that this problem that we're trying to solve? If we're trying to actually allow a family member to live there, the building inspector isn't letting them put a stove in, so this is our solution? Is that true? And my second question is, so at this point, if someone had a new building permit, who would the building inspector lean on? So from this language, you could build now a two-family or a single family with an ADU as new construction. So then who would the building inspector go to? I just feel like there's too many unknowns with this language in this bylaw. I feel like we already have an ADU and we're just opening this up to a whole big can of worms. I just don't really understand it.
This existed already. Okay,
So I guess tagging along on that for a second, how does this apply? Does this apply the same to a single-family residence, a two-family, multifamily, three-family? So with the MBTA zoning coming down the pike, can multifamily housing have accessory units that can get converted into another dwelling unit? Could District D have a two-family in it and then have an accessory unit and it get converted into a dwelling?
The general district allows it, a general district allows a three-family house and allows an accessory structure.
Okay,
You
so
have
now,
an existing accessory structure, you can make it into living quarters, and you can do that today.
okay,
For
so,
employees.
so two-family could go to three to four. So in a multifamily, so if we're doing the 15 units per acre, it hasn't been written yet, but I'm assuming you would have to allow accessory structures on multifamily properties as well.
This is by special permit, that doesn't qualify under the MBTA task force. As long as it's by special permit, it's not counted.
So they couldn't do it in
They could do it
an
under special
overlay.
permit. Yep.
They couldn't do it.
They couldn't do it by right.
Couldn't do it by right, but I'm wondering if that would work with the MBTA overlay, that if you had a by right, but then you had to get a special permit for something else on the property. I just don't know. I don't know if you can mix
The wording of the by right is such that it's a three-family multi, it doesn't go into accessory structures, so this is separate. This would not be pulled into that.
No, it wouldn't be by right, but they could do it by special permit.
Sure.
I guess, can I
Okay,
rephrase
so-
your question?
15 units per acre could go up if it was permitted.
It's
Well,
not
special-
counted if it's a special permit,
By special
No, it's
permit.
not counted, but
as
It
15
could.
per acre.
Can I rephrase
Right,
Can I
Sarah.
rephrase your
Yeah,
question? I think Mary's question is if there is a accessory structure at 10 Summer Street,
12
right,
summer.
12 Summer Street, today, if there's a garage that is detached for lawn equipment or whatever, could that be applied for here as a living quarters, as an additional unit? And the answer is,
12 summer is not owner occupied.
Yeah,
That's
it's
true.
a condo.
and also, it's a special permit. I mean, you might look at the density and whether that there was already a special permit done for that use. So there would be a special permit on a special permit, I think we're kind of
Yeah, so my
worrying about
question-
things that are,
I'm not worried. I thought we were discussing, so to try to put everything on the table of what the scenarios are, good and bad, and discuss them. So, it's a possibility. So I think if residents are listening, they should know.
Laura has her hand.
Laura, sorry.
I'm thinking about that possibility of something like 15 dwelling units per acre. And the model of having a large house and then having a carriage house or a garage or whatever it is, I think just spatially, it's gonna lend itself to the single-family housing typology rather than multiple units on a lot, because there simply won't be space on a more densely developed lot with multiple units to develop all of these accessory dwelling units. Could you have one accessory structure? Possibly, and again, they would go through the special permit and have the same right to it as everyone else would, but I don't see it as being, multiples that are attached to the number of dwelling units per acre. I think spatially it's.
And the owner occupied is unlikely to probably apply, so.
Okay,
Take a
so,
motion.
Christina?
Right now, we do not limit the number of accessory buildings, so I think we should limit the number of ADUs.
So this was just to change the language to an existing special permit law to make it a fairer thing for people. And now,
There's a
I
lot
think
of
we're
things.
getting into the weeds here. And I think we've kind of crafted, go ahead, Sarah.
No, go ahead, finish your thought.
I think we've kind of come to consensus on some language here, which is a little stronger than it was. And I think we should move forward and not, these things are not really coming to the ZBA to, they haven't had any. So, I mean, I don't think there's gonna be a line up the door
No,
for this, so,
5 years.
I don't know why we're, anyway, go ahead, Sarah.
can I just reframe Christina's question? I think she's saying, if I have a large property with 5 existing carriage houses, could I put 5 of these units? And I guess I go back to, let's let the ZBA figure out if there's a significant detriment to that. That's my opinion. So I think you could try, an applicant might try to do that, and I mean, if there was a giant piece of property with several existing buildings, but
And can I add something to this? I think we're forgetting that the new special permit criteria and the standards that we've adopted put an onus on the ZBA to do a very careful job in reviewing these.
yeah, so
And we're protecting the neighborhood, we're maintaining open space, we're doing all these things that need to be considered by the ZBA in granting a special permit. So I don't see this as a great opportunity for developers to come storming into town and overwhelm us with ADUs. It's not gonna happen.
Mary?
I will be the naysayer in this, that, I guess first, we haven't had a lot of these applications because it's been for employees, and if we change that, I think there will be more applications. I think that if we're missing some of the, language in here, that it would get denied by the ZBA, I think it would get easily appealed, and so I think it's quick and easy to say, oh, this will never happen, or the ZBA has all this control over with the special permit. But unless there's specific reasons why it would be denied that could stand up against this bylaw, it would get appealed. So, in this scenario, obviously glass half full, looking at it from my point of view, and I think a lot on the board look at it glass half full. So I think that, residents just need to be made aware of all of the scenarios, and hopefully we've done some of that tonight.
So, I mean, if you pay your mother $1 to live in a place next door to you, is she an employee? I don't know. What's the definition?
She should have been paid lifelong.
all right, that should be.
All right, so I want to know if we want to move this forward. I think we do.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
We did that already, I think.
Okay. Is there a second motion to close the public hearing?
We did, we closed it.
No, we have to close the total public hearing. We closed the
discussion part of the
portion.
public.
We put the public
Oh.
portion, we have to close the
Sorry.
full portion before we voted, I believe.
Sue?
Just one typo
Oh.
type thing.
Yeah.
So actually you should put chapter before 64.
There's like a chapter signal, right? Signal.
You can just put a big C period, but
C,
yeah.
period.
And then the town bylaw, I think, for the short-term paying guest in homes, that's the one we're looking
Yes.
for, is Article 10, Section 20C, in Roman numeral 10.
Good research.
Section what?
20C,
Dot C,
dot C.
large C, little c.
Oh, large C.
Great, thank you.
Okay, there's been a motion to close the deliberation part of the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, a show of hands.
What are we voting?
Closing the public
Closing.
hearing.
Closing the public hearing.
Christina, are you in on that?
Sorry, yes.
Can I ask a question?
Just close.
This last sentence, accessory use or accessory structure?
Use is what the
Use?
council gave us.
Okay, so are we in consensus on the proposed language?
Well, I'll move to advance the, this as an article to the special town meeting.
I'll second.
The motion been made and seconded, any discussion?
The only thing is it will need to be wordsmithed to see if the town, but I can work with Greg to make sure that gets appropriately put into the article.
So you're
So-
amending the motion to,
Yeah, just to-
that you would work with Greg
to
to wordsmith
wordsmith
anything to
but
make
the
it
con-
appropriate for a special town meeting.
Yes.
Any objection to the amendment? Go ahead,
Just a
Laura.
question, when we say wordsmith, we're just replacing.
No, it will say to see if the town will amend table 4.2, section number 7, line 7. Make sure I'll put all that
This-
surrounding-
Preamble, but what we're seeing here is
Is-
what
is
we're
the-
proposing for language, okay.
correct.
Any further discussion? All those in favor moving forward, Chris,
Yes.
Mary,
No.
Yes.
Sarah, Sue,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Christina?
Nope.
I think she said no.
She said no. And the chair votes yes, so we're moving it forward 5-2, thank you. Cell signaling technologies discussion, so, don't have much to say other than, I put in your packets, an application, to the ZBA that the applicant made to, regarding the height variance. And according to Sarah Melish, they'll be holding a public hearing on November 15th. And they will have a site visit or a site walk, and I did the math, it sounds like that would be November 11th at 9:30. They plan to put cell signaling first on their agenda as they have a very full meeting. Board members are welcome to attend, but I guess the restriction, there'll be no deliberations, only questions allowed are respect to understanding on the location of buildings. He's asked. Any comments or ideas on the application? Comments from the board? It's actually in the ZBA's hands, so.
Just the 11th is Veterans Day, do you know that?
holiday is,
Saturday, November 11th, at 9:30 is the site visit.
She said it's Veterans
It's
Day.
a Veterans
Saturday.
Day, I just didn't know if you can do that on a holiday.
I think the state holiday
It's
is the
not a federal
10th.
holiday. I had to work on Veterans Day.
I think the state holiday is the 10th. Yeah.
That would make sense, yeah.
That's the day I get off.
Okay, regard to the consultants, I know Christina asked who were the consultants used on the SLB 40B project, and Sarah Melish has responded that they were Van Ness, Beals and Thomas, Allen and Major, Miller Engineering, Environmental Partners, and Davis Square. Chet Horsley was engaged by Manchester Essex Trust, Conservation Trust. The town engaged Beals and Thomas to help with the defense of the appeal.
And Ron, there also was a Goddard consultant for wildlife.
What was the name of that firm?
Goddard, Goddard.
And what were they involved with?
Wildlife.
Wildlife. So I believe at our last meeting, I think Greg was following up with what Betsy had started with, beginning to look for peer review firms. Any update on that, Greg? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Ron. We're working to reach out to the different folks and see about their interest.
Okay. Any other comments on the cell signaling? Okay.
Can I, sorry. Since Sarah's here, I did ask Sarah, if she felt, that the finance committee, was equipped to review the financial analysis of the, applicant's, proposal, and she said she thought that they would be, and that, if they needed a peer review, the finance committee could come back to us to use our consultants, review. So I know there was some discussion about that. I don't know if we need to vote it, but I would strongly suggest that we rely on our finance committee for that portion of the review. And I guess
Okay.
if necessary, I can make a motion, but
No, I think that's a good idea. I think they can handle it. Who else knows our town better than our own FinCom?
Well, and it will be working with the town departments. You know, we have liaisons to each of the town departments, so the liaison will be working with the town departments to validate that the numbers provided by South Signaling agree with their numbers.
Yeah.
Because you're really talking water, sewer, infrastructure, police and fire.
Police and fire.
Yeah, the schools aren't an issue. It's every daycare.
Christina has her hand up.
Christina?
Thanks, Ron. I guess the reason that we use, and one of the reasons that we use consultants, is to relieve ourselves of some of the liability. So relying on the FinCom is putting ourselves in a position that, we're gonna come back if we miss something. I just don't understand why we would use consultants for other things and just say, let's check this box with the FinCom. I mean, we have a lot of specialties on our board ourselves, so I really just don't know why we're getting pushback on this. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
We're not checking a box. We're doing an in-depth analysis of the financial study presented to us.
I was actually speaking to the board,
Oh,
Sarah.
Any comments from the board on that?
I'll make a motion that we have the finance committee take lead the review of the cell signaling applications, financial impact of their application, and invite them to use our consultant process if they feel that's warranted, and to make a report back to the planning board.
I actually asked a question to the board. Why are we not using an outside consultant for this when we're using outside consultants for everything? Sarah, you jumped in and made a motion not to answer my question. I would like an answer from the board why we are not using a consultant for this and we're using consultants for everything else.
So noted.
So I will respond, the reason I made the motion is just kind of get some resolution on it. And I think we are using a board that knows the finances of our town better than a consultant would. And a consultant would have to go to the FinCom, get all the same information. And I certainly have faith that the finance committee, who handles $30 or $40 million worth of oversight and annually, has the expertise to take the first crack at the review. So, and why we are, and I think that's different than at least my personal knowledge of stormwater or, for example.
Ron, if I may,
Christina?
I think everyone has explained and expressed that we've never had a project like this, and, you know, hopefully our town will never be able to absorb another project like this. So to say that the FinCom has experience in this is just untrue. They haven't had anything like this. So we're not allowing the building inspector to oversee this project. We're gonna hire someone. So these facts just don't, if they're gonna have the first crack at it, that's perfectly fine, but we still need to have someone lined up to oversee this and confirm it. That's what we're having consultants do. So I don't understand why, again, we're getting so much pushback on this. We've never seen a project like this before. We should have an independent consultant to relieve some of the liability, and I agree that they can do some of it, but we should have an outside consultant double check it and make sure it's accurate, that we're not missing anything. I don't understand why we would not want that.
I
Ask a
think the
question,
film,
Ron? Oh, sorry.
go ahead. I think the FinCom is qualified. I think they know our town, and if they get stuck, we can push on a consultant. It's my opinion. Mary?
Through you, can I ask Sarah, did the town have a, outside financial consultant for the 40B project?
No, the finance committee did studies.
So no outside for that?
No, SLV presented their financial analysis. The finance committee disagreed with it and did their own financial analysis, and that was primarily around the schools and the infrastructure. But the information that any consultant is gonna use is gonna come out of DPW, fire, police. And we're more equipped to get real answers from them than an outside consultant is my opinion. We deal with their budgets every year. This is not rocket science to us. It's, you know.
So you made a motion. Is there a second to?
I actually have one final question.
Yes.
So Sarah, they are actually presenting a variance to you, and then, you know, a few weeks later, you're gonna review the financials. I just would like the board, I do think this is, you know, could be perceived as a conflict, another reason to obtain outside financial consultant. You know, Sarah's the chair on 2 of these major boards, making 2 major decisions, and so for me, again, I'm pitching the outside consultant. FinCom gives this information to the outside consultant, that's great, but, you know, these 2 boards and Sarah, the chair of both, I just don't think it's a great look, and I think there's an appearance of a conflict. Thank you.
Point of order, she's
Yes.
calling out the character of a chair of 2 boards. And that's something that if she does wanna do that, that should not be done
In here.
in here.
I think it was a conflict. She was
Point of
questioning
order.
conflict.
Sue has her hand up.
Thank you, Sue.
I suggest either Christina makes a motion to hire an outside consultant, or we continue with Sarah's motion to use the FinCom. Let's, one way or another.
Well, again, Sarah made a motion. I'm waiting for a second.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Is there any discussion? Greg, you have your hand up?
Thank you, Ron. I just want to make the comment that, again, the applicant will be providing a financial impact study by their hired consultant. So a peer review would be to take that report and basically verify whether or not it meets sort of professional standards. That's typically what a peer review is doing. It is someone in the same profession who is reviewing someone else's work to see if they have followed standard procedures and have made, whatever assumptions they've made are reasonable and their conclusions are justified. It's a little different than having our finance committee also take a look at what the impacts might be. So they're really 2 different functions here. So having a peer review of their financials is fairly straightforward and not a heavy lift. And it's something that I don't think you should shy away from. It really is different than what the finance committee would be doing.
Okay. Any other discussion? Sarah?
I think my intent of my motion was if the finance committee feels that they would like a peer review, as Greg describes it, they could hire somebody to do that.
That was understood, I think. So it's been, any other further discussion on the motion? Laura?
May I ask a question to Sarah? A couple more
Yes.
questions. Do you have a peer reviewer that you would call upon if you needed it? And did you feel the need of it in, say, the 40B process in the information that was presented?
No, we didn't use a financial peer reviewer in the 40B process because we did an in-depth review of the financial data provided to us, and we used multiple sources, including developers, and determined that we reached a different conclusion. And I would expect this would be similar. I think this is not as complicated because it does not include the schools, and the information with respect to the schools is sometimes more difficult to guesstimate.
So may
Laura?
just to further that, so if you reach a different conclusion in this project, what would be your next step then? And
We
would that,
would provide a report to the planning board. That would be our obligation.
okay, thank you.
Any other comments before we vote on the motion? Okay, I'll take a roll call vote to have the FinCom be the, review the applicant's financials. Laura?
Yes.
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Christina?
No.
And chair votes yes, it's a 6-1. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, you are.
MBTA Communities Multifamily Zoning District Update. Chris only.
Okay, so, a week ago Saturday, we had our first community open forum. It was held on the town common in front of town hall. I think there were probably 50 people there, which was
Actually, there were 70.
70 people
Yeah.
there. All right. So it was a much better turnout than we were expecting.
The donuts.
That was something. Donuts always help. And we had some really good questions from participants, and it was very, I think, very helpful to the task force. We also staffed a table yesterday at the carnival that got some feedback from people with younger kids who are going to the carnival, which was interesting. I got a little sick of watching the Pharaoh's thing. It was also cold and windy, but that's another whole thing. The town has hired or is about to hire the consultant to help us with compliance models, to see if we can get to to comply with the state mandate. And their work will be starting probably in the next few days. We're pleased about that. There will be kickoff meetings sometime in the next 2 weeks, where the consultant will make a presentation to the task force, the planning board, and anyone else who'd like to tune in. And I'll let you know when that happens.
When did you thought that was November?
It'll be as soon as we can get it scheduled. Yeah, it should be in November.
Because we only have one meeting, but, go ahead.
Well, you could just tune in and
Okay.
Zoom and do it. And this coming Thursday, it'll be an interesting meeting. There is a group of MIT students who have used the Manchester zoning mandate as a project for their fall semester. This is the planning and architecture department at MIT. And they're going to be making a preliminary presentation to the task force at the meeting on Thursday. It should be entertaining, if nothing else, I think. We're a little worried that some off-the-wall ideas might come forth that will confuse people, but I think in general, if everybody understands their students working on their projects and not working for the town, I think there may be some good ideas that come out.
What time?
It is at 6:30 on Thursday. The presentation started at 6:45. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any questions to Chris? Okay, good job. Now, our liaison committee task force update, senior housing. Who's spoke? Chris, do you want to speak?
We met today, Mary, Chris, Sue and I about gathering some questions that we want to go out and ask people. So we've got a homework to go sort of better understand what is senior housing and what are the incentives or disincentives, what's the market look like, and a whole set of questions that we're gonna go out and ask. I think 4 or 5 people and then reconvene in 2 weeks. And then the next one's Harbor Minute. Well, any other
Any
input?
comments on senior housing or questions? Okay, on the harbor management plan? you
Yeah,
again?
harbor management plan, we haven't met again, but Urban Harbors Institute from Mass Boston did come and meet with Bion and do a harbor tour, I think on the 13th, and our group will get back together fairly soon, I guess.
Okay, thank you. CPC, it's open season on projects. We meet again on 11/2 to see what's come in. I'll keep you informed on the current projects that the CPC is being asked to fund. Any other liaison reports from anyone? Okay. Thank you. Approval of regular meeting minutes. There was a set of minutes, or was it,
It was a 9/11.
9/11, yes. Is any objection to moving those forward? Comments on them?
Move to approve the minutes of 9/11.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, hands.
I don't think I was there.
All those in favor that were present, hands. Okay, approved.
You were not present, Chris.
Happy French. Back to this subject I brought up at the beginning of the meeting. 3 citizen petitions and a possible lease community center building opinions by the board. Greg will get something to us soon on what they involve, and then we need to get together and talk about them. So now that you've had a couple hours to think about a date, anybody,
I would say next Monday.
Laura,
Next Monday
you're the
works for
one
me.
that has a lot on.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm not available on Monday.
Okay,
But
so
don't let me
Monday's
slow
out.
things down, I just wanted to let you know.
I can come Monday.
You wanna,
I would assume that if the select board is talking about them on Thursday, we can all either, task force is at the same time. So we could tune in or we could watch the tape and get the primer, so we didn't, I don't know if do you know if there'll be a presentation on them or
I believe Thursdays is only.
just to approve the warrant?
Thursday is just to move the warrant, right?
Right,
That's all we're doing.
okay.
So
Well, Greg will send us whatever we
Jake
have.
Select Board.
Okay.
So I think
would
we'd
say
like to
next
have the
Monday.
whole board, opine on this, so we can get something. So I'd like to find a date where we all can get together, would be my preference.
Be hard.
Saturday morning,
No.
No, throw it out there.
When does the report have to be written by?
7 day, Greg wants an opinion 7 days ahead of the special town
So
meeting.
it'd be the 6th of November.
November 6th. So we have between now and November 5th, I would say.
November 5th is a Sunday. So it's really next week, which is Halloween on Monday is the 30th, Halloween is the 31st.
What about the first or the second? Wednesday or
November
Thursday.
1st or 2nd is being proposed. Check your calendars, let me check. Okay.
I could do the 2nd.
Yeah, I can do the 2nd.
I cannot do the 2nd,
You can or cannot, couldn't hear you.
not,
Not the 1st.
cannot do the 1st either.
I can do the 1st. It's a Wednesday.
Christina said she couldn't do it.
Is that good with everyone, the 1st?
No, Christina said
Krista
no.
can't do it.
Okay. How about the 31st? About the
Halloween.
3rd?
Are we talking
No.
nighttime or daytime?
Would be in the evenings,
Third
this is a
is-
working.
So that's Halloween, the 31st.
We can wear costumes to the
No.
meeting. and bring
God, no.
Ron is saying he has extra candy.
What
I'm
about
in
the
Vermont.
3rd, somewhat earlier, towards the end of the day? Could people like Zoom in or something?
Okay, well, I'm trying to accommodate everyone, Christina. Several people work, so I can't.
I'm out of town on the 3rd.
The 3rd, okay.
How about the?
I think we're
No,
we're
I
at the
can't.
30th, the 1st, or the 2nd. Sue's holding her head over there.
No, I'm
Who can't make the 1st?
Christina.
Who can't make the 2nd?
You say you can't make the 1st?
I can't make the 1st or the 2nd.
You can't make either.
Correct.
Is this?
I mean, Mondays are a regular day.
Is a Saturday
So,
morning a
no.
possibility, the 4th?
No.
No.
Oh, God. Supposed to
Sorry,
get
plans.
together on a Saturday.
I guess I would suggest that we do it on Monday, just because that's our regular day and the rest of the week gets
Monday the
complicated. Is that?
30th?
Yeah, I mean, I can't do it, but I agree that going ahead with the regularly scheduled time works for most people.
So Monday the 30th, can we do 5:30, since you're not gonna be there?
You can't do 5:30.
Okay, we'll do 6:30 and the 30th.
Okay.
And this will be to discuss our opinions of the warrant articles and anything else that might come up.
So when do you think we'll get the material to me by? Is that
That's up
meetings?
to, Greg, when do you think you might have some material to us?
Yeah, I can have that to you in a couple days,
Days.
so by Thursday.
So we're the 30th, 10:30, 6:30. Gail, I'll send an agenda to you to get posted. Great. Anybody have anything else? Laura?
Yes, believe it or not,
More.
as much as I wanna get out of here. I think, I heard Mary say, and I'll paraphrase so you can correct me, that going forward, having town council review of our proposed regulations would be a good idea. I agree with that, I think that's good practice. And so perhaps we could put that on our agenda, and Mary, please chime in if I misstated you, but I think that's good practice before we make a regulation a real rule. So perhaps we could put that on a future agenda.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, the plan was to, everyone was gonna get bullet items to Gail, and I was
On the curb cut,
on the curb.
driveway entrances.
On the curb cuts, right, and then you're talking about the curb cuts.
A general
Everything, going
policy,
forward,
a
going
general
forward, a
policy.
general good practice would be to have town
Okay.
council review, or council review.
So council did review, and gave us a memo, and I,
Looking for-
was looking for it, and I just found it right
Okay.
before this meeting, so I will put that in our packet.
This is on the rules and
On
regulations.
the rules and regulations. I think a quick skim was that there was some additions, the kinds of wording changes he's been making, a few numbers of days changes, and then some of the removing of the reiteration of state law and stuff like that. So I think that some of that stuff is actually, on a quick read, a bulk of it is that kind of thing. There may be some more substantive changes that I haven't looked at. So I'm gonna at least put that in the packet and the rules and regs final version. which I still,
So I'd be looking to put that
Yeah.
on the agenda, and I know some people have asked,
Yeah.
on the 27th of November.
Yeah.
So we'll have plenty of time to discuss it then. Mary?
So, yes, I agree with that, Laura. I thought it was a requirement. I thought the prior town planner had said that once we approve it as a planning board, it then goes to town council for approval, and then it gets posted. And then if we, and then if we want to do amendments to it, it just goes to the board vote, and then the same process, it goes to town council for approval again. It doesn't,
I think you're correct, but I thought that was for warrant articles going to town meeting.
no, I thought it was for the rules and regs document.
So we did send it to town council.
Right,
And he
so she
didn't
sent parts of it, and then I don't know if it's a separate memo that you got,
no, we all got it.
that Ron had sent in an email, because my quick look at that was I thought he was saying there was contradictions within the document, and that, so we had to change those. And I think
I
we
haven't looked at it carefully.
discussed last meeting that, because I think it might have been Christine that said, we need to start from the beginning again. With the rules and regulations, I don't think we need to do that, but one of my questions was gonna be that we establish a timeline for the rules and regulations, whether it's section by section or when we're gonna complete the whole document. And then I'd like to do the same with the floodplain bylaw, timeline for that.
So here's my feeling on the floodplain bylaw. During our primer, he said we're not gonna get plans till 2025. So I don't wanna go to town, my feeling is, I don't wanna go down to town meeting twice. So I'm not thinking that's something we need to move forward immediately. That's my
Agreed.
feeling.
I thought that we were still working on the actual bylaw though, not just the maps, but,
Well, but we have time, the point is, we've got a lot on, my feeling was the time of the board and not to bring, if we, going forward, I will put it on the agenda, but right now with this, cell signaling thing coming
Yeah,
down the
yeah.
pike, I thought we would, and what's going on with Chris's group, I thought I would try to give us some time on that one. But
and
go
then-
ahead, but I agree on the rules and regs, we'll
For the
try to
rule-
get
yeah.
that on and try to do that piecemeal.
Yeah,
And
see,
then-
section
It
by
makes sense
section,
to
I think is
me,
the
and,
way to digest it.
then just so it doesn't get off of our radar, the demolition delay bylaw that we talked about.
So that's being worked on
By the
by
historic commission.
historic districts, Rosemary Costello, is it?
Yeah, so she came and I think we talked with her and it was a feeling and Betsy's recommendation and Rosemary's sort of affirmed that the historic commission would take the lead on that.
Okay, and then, I have mentioned a few times the Aquifer Overlay District, and I know it came up at the, select board, public hearing or whatever, where they had open comments that, someone from the Open Space and Rec had talked about like the Gordon College land and protection and the watershed. And so maybe if we can work with them to start to talk about an aquifer overlay district, to protect the watershed.
I think Betsy started something, but I'll, okay,
Okay, you think
forgot about that
Betsy?
one.
And we have the stormwater, as well, that she had started.
The stormwater we
Question
moved
about
to the
that?
general
Yeah, I
bylaws.
thought we moved that out of our.
But she had started making edits to it, and she had it in her write-up that it's, I think especially with cell signaling, it's very important that that's,
I'll look that up,
accurate.
Laura.
We checked that with Chuck Dan, because I thought we had moved it to general bylaws and then updated it to be, to
Compliant
align
with his
compliant
requirements.
with Massachusetts, yeah, so that it
It
was the most up to
predated
date.
Betsy.
Right, and just a point of clarification, who are we working with on the water district overlay? Was that the task force, the water task force, or?
No, the building inspector.
I think Mary said the open space committee, the water, the aquifer
Oh, I think it was
overlay.
open space, yeah,
The open space. Oh,
just as a suggestion.
I
Ron, this is Christine. I feel like I'm falling too far behind. I've had my hand up for a bit.
Okay.
Jump in back to the rules and regulations. Betsy sent the entire package to town council. Then there was an email exchange that we were all on, that the price to review these rules and regs was gonna be too high. And, you know, it looks like Greg just said, okay, go ahead with these 3 sections with the intent of the rest of the document to go forward. So I'm not sure why we're not still sending the rest of the document to town council, and town council's opinion was not to go forward with the regulations as written. So are we not gonna do anything the town council has said? We're ignoring their recommendations? Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't think we're ignoring them. I haven't seen them. Have you?
It was in an email. It was
Yeah.
a sort of a complicated email.
Let
So
me look
let's
through
put it,
them.
we'll put it in the packet for next time, and I think we agreed last time, I think, to sort of take it section by section, starting with the driveway entrances, which is why I pulled that piece, and I can pull it, we can break the June 12th approved material into sections, perhaps it might be easier to digest than the giant document.
So I thought the curb cuts, driveway openings, whatever we're gonna call them, were being sent to town council. That's what I was expecting to see tonight.
Why don't we review what changes we think need to be, it doesn't make sense to have him review something that we're gonna
Well, if we're
potentially
saying
tweak.
scale of 1 inch equals 100 versus
Right.
1 inch equals
Right.
40, I don't think we need town council.
Right.
Just
Or
anything
has some comment.
substantive that we think needs to go there.
Town council hasn't reviewed that section.
It's an application, we're talking about the application, not the, talking about the application.
Both.
And, yeah, well, any of the substantial on the rules we'll send, but
But he hasn't reviewed it at all. I think that's what Christina's saying.
Yeah. Well, we
Okay.
can send it to him.
anything else?
So, do we have a decision on this? Are we sending it to town council?
We,
We agreed
again,
last time we were gonna start with the openings.
are we sending what to town council, the curb entrances?
Correct.
Well, again, I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna get some, we're gonna take Mary's comments, we're gonna get them all to get all your comments to Gail, we're gonna pull out the substantial ones that have to do with the rules and regulations part and vote to send them to town council. And the application changes, I think if they're de minimis, I don't think we need to send them to town council, I think we can do them ourselves.
Okay, Ron, but I don't think you're hearing me, and I guess maybe I should explain it in a different way. Town council's only reviewed 3 sections out of the, whatever, 10. So town council hasn't reviewed this section with the rest of the rules and regulations in harmony, and in harmony with the bylaws and the general bylaw. So they just took those 3 sections. They haven't looked at driveway opening to see if it makes sense with the rest of our, I understand our de minimis changes. Those are just clerical typos, we're gonna do that, but town council hasn't looked at the whole section to see if there's anything wrong with the cross references or the way it works out, or, I mean, they made opinions that we've created new work and new responsibilities, and I don't think that has been addressed with the driveway opening section. So I think we need to send it to town council to review for those, not the things that we brought up tonight. Those are typo errors. I'm talking about what they found in the other 3 sections and what they may find with this one.
So should we send them to town council when we have them kind of vetted by us, or should we send them now when they're kind of not vetted by Laura?
I also have some comments in addition to Mary's, so I would suggest we collect our comments, get them to Gail, get everybody to look at the document, and then send it to town council. I agree, it should be looked at by town council. There are a few things in there that could be clarified, or, you know, wrong references. And we need a little time to be able to send those changes to Gail. I'm traveling for the next several days, so if you can, you know, if it's before the meeting on the 27th, backing up a week from that or something, would be acceptable. We need a realistic amount of time to comment.
Greg had his hand up first, I thought?
Sure.
Or you took it down?
I was simply
Ron, town council has done a preliminary review of the curb cut section, But if you want to have additional comment on it, then I can get those to him as well.
Okay, great.
Okay, thanks.
I was also just gonna point out that this is a robust document. It may have some errors that Nate can work with somebody and say, you know, this is the scale we want you to use. We can get his comments as well. But I think we're in a lot better shape than we were before we had this document. We have a document, we have a process, we have engineers who are reviewing the driveway entrances. So I think we're a lot better off. Is it perfect? No. But, you know, I think we can give ourselves a half check on getting something done. So I don't, I feel like maybe people watching might think that we're in some sort of dire lack of oversight of driveway entrances, and I personally don't think that's the case, so.
Okay, are we ready for that famous
I move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
motion to adjourn has been made and seconded? Anybody opposed, I'll say? Good. Thank you all.
Thank you.